Hello, welcome to QX Church. You find us online at qxchurch.org. I'm Pastor Scott Conway with lesson number 6 in our series, Decisions. Now, when we share Christ, one of the things we always have to remember is decision-making truths. Now, the decision-making truths, of course, are that people will go first to survival. If the particular decision we're asking them to make or the particular piece of information we're asking them to consider does not go to their survival in some way, shape, or form, then they can move on to emotion. And then people will make a decision emotionally and typically justify it logically. Then the third level, of course, of decision-making truth is that people will then go to logic, but only if either they have no emotional opinion or if the emotions are mixed. Then they go to logic. And ultimately, then people will go to philosophy, but they typically only make it to philosophy if it doesn't go to a survival need, and that can be physical survival, only being the most obvious. It can be social survival, family survival, relational survival, financial survival. Whatever level of survival strikes them as I have to or I can't. And then the next level is emotion, which they get to only if it doesn't apply to survival. Logic, only if it doesn't apply to survival or survival or emotion does not help them make a decision. It does not help them form an opinion. That's so mixed, they're so torn. Logic will then help them be the tiebreaker. And then to philosophy, but only if logic hasn't made the decision for them, emotion hasn't made the decision for them, and survival hasn't made the decision for them. Very often when we're presenting the gospel, we tend to, sometimes, at least people like me, go to logic. We try to debate. We try to argue. Some people go to broader philosophical truths and try to start there. And very often people get bogged down in survival or emotion. Now, there was a time in the not-too-distant past where emotion was actually on the side of Christianity. That the popular perception of Christianity, the exposure people had to the church was by and large positive. Not a lot of people, compared to today, as a percentage of the population, started off with a negative opinion of the church. These days, it seems people have primarily a negative opinion of Christ's church unless they are already Christians. And even already being Christians does not necessarily guarantee they will have a positive opinion of the church, of the universal Christian church. Very often people only have a positive opinion over their particular brand or their particular flavor of Christianity. And that to many, many people, it's only correct to interact with Christ the way they do. To have maybe sometimes as specific as their style of music. To dress the way they dress. To behave the way they behave. To be politically involved the way they are politically involved. To believe on all of these political issues the way they believe on the political issues. And that anyone who has any variant belief is necessarily, in some of their views, a heretic. And when non-Christians get exposed to all of this and all the infighting within Christendom and a lack of love, because we tend to have love in community, but sometimes we're not as good at it in public, in social media, in the public square, in the political square, where people tend to encounter Christianity for the first time. So unlike reaching out to people in the 50s and the 60s and even the 70s, things are very different now. If you go on social media, Facebook at the moment happens to be the one that's most popular, and you try to see what is being said about Christians, you will find that a ton is being said about Christians, primarily coming into the political space, and it's by and large negative. And so when you're sharing Christ with someone, when you're talking about anything Christian, anything spiritually minded that comes from the Bible, what you're going to find sometimes is you're encountering a lot of people who are already in the survival and emotional space with very negative opinions about Christianity. Some people believe that if I accept Christ, that survival reflex kicks in. It says, well, that means I have to discriminate against gays. That means that I have to, avoid drinking. That might mean I have to quit my job and go find another job. And all of these, like survival, I have to, but I can't. That I can't do all of these things. I can't have all of these political perspectives that they bundled up because that was their first exposure to Christianity. And so sometimes when you're sharing Christ, one of the decision-making truths you need to keep in mind is people might have a survival and a very intense emotional reason to reject Christ. Now, it may or may not be logical. It may or may not make any sense. But that's their first exposure, and they have these very, very strong emotional associations to Christianity. So these days, when you're evangelizing, when you're witnessing, when you're even just sharing Christ with especially politically minded friends, you have to be aware of that. And sometimes spend more time there. Help them unpack it. Now, here's something that's important is don't make them feel stupid, because that's their perspective. It's hard to argue someone into the kingdom of God and be calling them stupid and expect them to be accepting Christ. Hopefully you understand that, right? And so as we approach people accepting Christ as their Savior, part of what we want to do is unpack some of that. Decouple it, unattach it, let it go. Get them to the place where they understand that accepting Christ as Savior is accepting Christ as Savior. It's not accepting a package of political views. It's not accepting a whole package of holiness behaviors that they have to instantly be doing, or worse, be doing before they can accept Christ. And from our perspective, to understand that the accepting of Christ is accepting Christ as Savior. The transformation that takes place is a shift toward greater love. And most people understand that being more loving is a good thing. And so very few people I've ever encountered, in fact, I can't think of an example, who has a reasonably healthy view of love. Nobody I've encountered thinks that loving people more in a healthy way is a bad thing. There are a lot of people that think that the package of political views they typically see associated with Christianity is a bad thing. And they'll argue and they'll fight with those. And sometimes you're talking about Christ and they'll talk about a political issue instead. And it's because that's where their argument has been. And the more you can decouple Christianity from politics, the more you can decouple Christianity even from the holiness behavior, and help them understand that the dividing line between a Christian and a non-Christian is accepting Jesus Christ as Savior. The rest comes later, if at all. And that the first transformation that will tend to take place is a move toward more lovingness. And if they disagree that Christians are doing that, that's fine. Whatever is more loving for them, whatever is more enlightened for them, whatever is more elevated for them is the likely result. And in time, maybe some other things will shift. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll continue in the direction that they're going for them right now. That's not up to me. It's not up to us. That's up to God. But even if someone's arguing, even if they keep jumping into politics, even if they keep jumping into any number of collateral side issues, just remember this. He who engages is engaging, even if they're arguing with you. And it's not enough just to dismiss their argument, but to deal with their argument in a way that satisfies them. To help them understand, not just like, none of that stuff matters. Oh, you'll get that later. But to just really help them understand, it's like, I know this is important to you. There's a lot of Christians that agree with you. There are pro-choice Christians, and there's pro-life Christians. That there's pro-gay marriage Christians, and there's anti-same-sex marriage Christians. That just because someone has accepted Jesus Christ as Savior doesn't necessarily bring this entire package of beliefs and political views with it. That the key difference is accepting Christ as Savior and moving toward a greater sense of this powerful love. And that might not look the same for you that it does for others. A lot of it depends on where your focus is. And if your focus is on protecting children, you tend to see things one way. If your focus is on protecting freedoms, you tend to see things another way. And all of us are still human after we've accepted Christ. And all of us will still have our own views after we've accepted Christ. And that the main difference, the main reason to accept Christ as Savior is to receive forgiveness of your sins, to be released from that guilt, and not just the feeling of guilt, but the actual guilt, to be given a clean slate, a chance to step up and try again, to be accepted as a member of the family of God. And any of us who've had a Thanksgiving dinner or had a Christmas dinner or any extended family events know that just because you're family doesn't mean all of you agree on everything. That's okay. As long as you agree that you're a member of the family and you've accepted Christ's sacrifice on the cross for your sins. Everything else follows. And what it'll look like for you will be whatever is your highest and most loving, enlightened, illuminated best. And by doing those kind of conversations, that helps take all these other collateral issues, these stumbling blocks, these locked doors to them out of the way so they can have a clear path to the cross. So even if they're arguing with you, if they're talking about the issue, and there's a philosophy that arises from Henry Blackaby, and this idea is that people don't talk about spiritual things without a prompting of the Holy Spirit. And that when people are talking about the things of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit is there. And even if they're being argumentative, they're engaging. When there's pushback, they're engaging. Now, it's important that they're not pushing back against our pushing. But if they're arguing with us, think about this for a second. If you want to hit me, if you want to wrestle with me, if you want to push me, can you do it from way over there? Or you kind of have to come here. So if your goal is to push me and you're on the other side of the room and you want to push me, you want to wrestle me, you need to come to me. And so long as you're right here, so long as we're engaged, I can do things. If, on the other hand, someone walks out that door, they're not engaged, what can I do? Now I have no influence. They're gone. And so if you understand that he who engages is engaging, so long as they're in discussion with you, even if it's an argumentative discussion, so long as they're talking about spiritual things, that still gives you this opportunity to remain engaged. Something to remember as we debate philosophy and we debate logic is that no one is argued into accepting Christ. You can't logic someone into a heartfelt belief. And sometimes people will try to argue. They'll fight. They'll go head to head, and they wonder why someone doesn't accept Christ. And they'll even get very judgmental. I don't know why they're not accepting Christ. I told them what the truth is, and that they just don't accept it. I don't know what's wrong with them. So, well, first off, nothing's wrong with them. And that attitude, saying, okay, if this is what Christians are like, all you're going to do is get in my face and yell and scream and argue with me? All you're going to do is tell me that I'm stupid, pass judgment on? Why would I want to be a part of that religion? And suddenly, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. It's like, okay, even more. Why would I want to have a relationship if that's what that relationship is all about? So, just be aware, you don't argue someone into accepting Christ. Something else to remember is that he who will make a fast commitment may also make a fast uncommitment. Now, in this doesn't necessarily mean that just because you show up and you're talking about spiritual things and they pray right there, that necessarily means that's a fast commitment for them. Some people are ripe for harvest. So in John 4:35, when Jesus is talking about, the harvest is ready and pray for workers to go work in the harvest. Sometimes the harvest is ready. Sometimes people have been walking their journey and they're ready now. All they need is that person to show up in their lives with a divine appointment to lead them that last step. Sometimes to answer their last question. Sometimes they're in the midst of a struggle and they've kind of gotten everything balanced out. So in the survival and the emotion, they're ready. They just need a couple of questions answered. They just need to understand one larger truth. And you might be the one to show up and give that to them. Maybe. And if you just happen to show up at the right place, you just happen to be there at the right time to lead them on the last steps to a salvation decision, you might be the one to usher them into the kingdom. Not because they're a fast decision maker making a fast commitment, but because they've been walking their journey at whatever level they need to walk their journey. Very often when people come to events, like to Billy Graham type events, when they come to large revival events, they come to church outreaches, they've been walking a journey enough that they're willing to go to the church to see something, to hear something, to get some more answers, that they're ripe enough for harvest to be there. And that's one of the reasons those events are so effective, as opposed to street evangelism, where someone just goes to a street corner and they preach from the street corner. Because there often you're going to people who aren't remotely ready for harvest. They're not on a spiritual journey. That they aren't coming because they're potentially interested in Christ. And so people who are called to a ministry like that are by and large, honestly, called to a ministry that is going to seem ineffective. But if they do their job well, if they follow their calling, what they might be is a seed planter. What they might be is someone who is moving someone just a couple of steps. And that someone who hears them, even if they don't remember that's what triggered it, might be moving closer to Christ, not making a decision necessarily there, but moving closer to Christ, and, unfortunately, sometimes moving further away from Christ, depending upon what the street preacher is preaching. So keeping in mind that some people simply really are ripe for harvest, there are also some people who are serial acceptors. They accept whatever's being presented to them. They may have accepted Christ several times before. Now, when I was talking with some men in church leadership, and some of them had done college ministry, and one of the things sometimes they did in college ministry, which honestly I personally have a problem with, is they will go knocking on doors and say, I'm doing this survey for a sociology class, or I'm doing this as an exercise in my psychology class. Would you mind answering a few questions as part of my survey? And basically they're lying. I always have a problem when someone opens with a lie. But they open up with a survey, and they talk to people, and they're asking about spiritual things, and they ask then about Jesus Christ. Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? Somewhere in some way, shape, or form, that question comes up. And all they're really doing is they're using the guise of a survey to make contact, to ask specific Jesus-centered questions. Now, so long as this approach is done in an open and honest way, I don't have a problem with it. Where I do have a problem with it is when it's done under the guise of a class exercise, when it's done under the guise of an assignment from a professor. That's the only time I really have a problem with it. So long as someone says, I'm doing a survey, would you mind answering a few questions? And you just leave it at that, that's honest. But when you pretend it's for a class, that's dishonest. So you never open with dishonesty. Now, that said, they get to this discussion. And something that a lot of these people have noticed is a lot of college students will accept Christ. But then they do the follow-up, and there's no meaningful change. Then they do the follow-up, and the person has now unaccepted Christ. And in fact, the one particular gentleman I talked to who had spent 4 years working in college ministry doing exactly that kind of thing, said that he cannot recall a single instance of seeing meaningfully spiritual fruit in the lives of someone who accepted in a single session. Where he did see it, though, is where there was conversation, where there was a connection, where there was a journey to the acceptance. That's where he saw the fruit. But the short version of it is someone's willing to accept Christ 15 minutes from acceptance, they're just as likely to unaccept Christ when a different point of view is presented to them. They may easily slip from one commitment to another. They may be a Buddhist, a Taoist, an atheist, a Hindu, a Muslim, or any number of brands of Christianity. You might show up one day and now they're Muslim. But then you come back and you find out, now they're Mormon. Now they're Jehovah's Witness. Suddenly they're exploring Catholicism. Yep, now they're back to fundamentalism. Now they kind of think Pentecostalism is really kind of interesting. And it's because they really don't know. They're praying the prayer that they're told like a magical incantation is going to work for them. Now, this is also an issue in international ministry, especially in a lot of Asian cultures where it is considered rude to refuse a guest. And so very often when people are presenting the gospel, and they're presenting the gospel under certain circumstances, people will accept Christ because they believe it's the polite thing to do. And that doesn't mean they're making a lifetime commitment to Christ. What it means is they're being polite. And if you come from a Western mindset and you drop yourself into an Eastern culture, you might think you've got hundreds, even thousands of people making a lifetime commitment to Jesus Christ. And what you really have is hundreds, maybe thousands of people being polite. And that when you follow up with them, they will be polite. And so these things are hard to tell if you don't know their mindset. And it's hard to tell what anyone's mindset is if you don't have a relationship. Now, some people, as the serial acceptors, might even have accepted Christ several times. I was talking to a woman who had gone forward at an altar call 7 separate times. And not even all at different churches. At one particular church, I think she'd gone forward 3 times. Once at a public outreach, once at one of their college, their young people's ministries, and then once in big church. And I found out she'd accepted Christ a total of 7 times. Now, when I talked to her, she had just accepted Christ for the 7th time. And this one was the time, because she really didn't understand the first few times, and now she's there. And I know several people who have accepted Christ more than once. Sometimes they accepted Christ because they were told, well, if you pray this prayer, then you're saved. And okay, well, sure. But, I can speak after you and recite a prayer if that's going to get me into heaven. If the dividing line between heaven and hell is a repeat after me, I can do a repeat after me. Sure, why not? And then that gets marked down somewhere in the road, because a lot of churches who have a ministry that's centered around outreach will count the decisions for Christ. Well, this one particular woman had been counted 7 times. A particular man I know has probably been counted at least 3 times. And how many people do this, I don't know, because I don't know how well we have any way of keeping track of these serial acceptors. And sometimes when you look at the combination of church numbers of how many people have accepted Christ at their church, and you total it all up, and you compare that to the number of Christians, you begin to realize, okay, well, if the numbers are true, and it's not necessarily that the churches are fudging the numbers, but the way they're counting those, we have no way to know. But if those numbers are true, we should be such a predominantly, powerfully Christian nation that 150% of our population in this country should be Christian. I mean, it seems that way from the numbers. And it's because when someone comes up and they pray to accept Christ, and it goes down in a roster of this person has accepted Christ, they made a salvation decision, follow up with them, we don't know if this is their first time, or their 3rd time, or their 7th time. So we have no way to know how many people are getting counted 2, 3, 5, 10 times. So whether someone truly makes a real commitment or they don't make a real commitment will be found in the fruit that follows, which will be a changed heart. If their heart changes, if a hard heart softens, if an already loving heart becomes more loving, if there's a shift in them, and it might be a big shift, it might be a little shift, then you have reason to believe that at least right here, right now, they mean it. Now, if someone creates this shift because they've accepted something on an emotional level, that doesn't necessarily mean their heart has truly changed. It means their emotions have changed, which means their emotions can change back. And a changed heart even can still be closed off and hardened later on. So if someone has accepted Christ and their heart has softened, all that hardness they had, that armor that they had to protect themselves from hurt begins to drop, and then they get hurt again. Well, then they might armor right back up, and the heart might harden again. If they get hurt really, really bad again. If they get hurt in the church, by members of the church, by the leadership of the church, that heart could harden, that spirit could close. even if they really have made an earnest, honest, and a deep commitment to Christ. Sometimes it can be a simpler thing as an example that they see. Brand new Christians are enormously vulnerable. And just like a physical baby coming into the physical world and spending the first years of their life just imprinting, just absorbing what's around them, the brand new Christian, as a baby Christian, will tend to do the same thing. They're looking around and they're absorbing. The difference is they're not a baby who's a blank slate. They're an older person, maybe a teenager, maybe an adult, maybe an older adult, that has life experience and existing perspectives. But what they're absorbing is, this is what Christianity looks like. This is what Christianity looks like. Now, I accepted Christ on December 1st, 1983. And I was doing exactly the same thing. I was, involved in church. I'm absorbing things from the church. I'm absorbing things from my home group. I'm absorbing things from, television and radio. And I'm trying to find, what is this Christianity thing really all about? And if I dive into it, what is it really all about? And a couple of the early things I ran into, one of which was the whole charismatic movement, the Power of Christ movement. And so much so did I buy into this that I actually attempted to do a healing at a Christmas party. That didn't go over so well, and incidentally, in case you're wondering, did not result in the healing of the woman. This is one of the dangers of brand new Christians, is we're absorbing all of these things. We don't know what to think because we don't necessarily have a point of reference. And so we just accept it. And we tend to take action on it. A lot of brand new Christians sometimes tend to dive into the Bible to the exclusion of all else. That one particular woman I know, when she accepted Christ, she would ditch classes to read her Bible. Because somewhere she had gotten this idea lodged in her head that the Bible was the only book that was important, because she had been taught this in church. And that all of the secular teaching was bad for her. That all this public school stuff was bad for her. And so what she actually sought was, how do I avoid all this bad stuff, all this worldly stuff, all this carnal stuff, because that's what she understood from the lessons she had been taught, and steep myself in spiritual things. And so what she did is she was blowing off school as much as she could and only reading her Bible. And in a separate case, and this one was mine. This is part of how easy it is to rattle a new Christian's faith. So I'm early in my Christian walk, and I'm at a wedding. Now, I love to dance at weddings. To this day, I love to dance at a wedding reception. If there's dancing going on, expect me on the dance floor. And I was at a Baptist wedding. And the church I was going to was a Baptist church. Now, if some of you understand, I don't know if it's still the rules that they enforce, but back then, they weren't enforcing it as against the attendees of the wedding. But the church leadership, which included the home group leadership, wasn't allowed to dance. That bugged me. Because I'm thinking, whoa, hang on a second. So God doesn't want you celebrating at a wedding? At a wedding? I can understand not going to nightclubs and bars where it's a pickup place and alcohol and all that. Okay, I can understand that. I can wrap my head around that. But at a wedding, at a Christian wedding, you're still not allowed to dance in celebration of the event? Am I not supposed to dance? So, no, you can dance. It's just if you're in leadership. So if I'm going to serve Christ as a leader, I can't dance? And that really bugged me. So I was thinking, no, whoa. So your God is a God of not celebrating, is what I was getting. And so being mindful of these things, so sometimes what you do can be a stumbling block, but also what you don't do can be a stumbling block. This is what happens with brand new Christians. And that can create a shift in the heart. Now, in my case, that was one of the big impetuses for going, okay, I need to find out if this is a universal Christian thing, because if it is, I'm not really sure about this Christian thing. If God, for whatever reason, is afraid of dancing at weddings. So I can see how the bar scene might not be healthy for me, but I don't see how a wedding is unhealthy for me. And ultimately ended up at a different church. Not just on that issue, but on a number of them. Now, from the outside, though, it may be impossible to tell if someone has a changed heart. I mean, they might behave in exactly the same way on the outside, but they're coming to it with a different attitude. That they might have done something purely out of duty before, but now they're doing it out of duty mixed with love. They might have done something purely because it's the responsible thing to do before, but now they're doing it because it's responsible and loving. Someone who was already naturally loving, but maybe had a little bit of resentment mixed in there, might have the resentment drop away. It's hard to tell from the outside. Somebody might still be engaging in exactly the same behaviors they engaged in before that you might not think are good behaviors, but now they're beginning to feel bad about it. That's a heart shift, which may eventually result in a behavior shift, but they're running on external habits right now, but that heart is shifting, and what they used to justify, well, this is just the way things are. Now they're beginning to wonder, I'm not really sure this is the best way to do it. And it's all internal, and we can't necessarily see these things from the outside. But be careful about claims that someone has made a lifetime commitment to Christ, because we really don't know. And we really don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know if it's coming out of survival, if it's coming out of emotion, if it's coming out of logic, if it's coming out of philosophy, or if it's going to be something that's really going to manifest in their entire lives, or something that's only going to affect a part of their lives, or they're only going to make the salvation decision, and you're not going to see much more than that. We don't know. But whatever is going on in someone's life, always be ready with loving truths. Always be ready with loving truths. 1 Peter 3:15, in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Now, part of what that means is you settle the lordship of Jesus Christ in your own heart first. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give a reason for the hope that you have. To give an answer, that implies a question. To everyone who asks, that means they've seen something different in you. You've settled Christ as Lord. There's something different in you, in the way you live your life, in your speech, in the way you handle situations that prompts people to ask. And what they want to know is, so what is going on with you? What's different about you? And to give a reason to be able to get past the survival and the emotion that your life, the life that you're living, has shown them that level of triumph. And that emotionally they've gotten to that place where they want it. And be ready to give a reason, the logic, for the hope that you have. But to do this with gentleness and respect. Gentleness, so you don't derail that emotion. Respect of what they already think, what they already believe, and respect for whatever survival things might be connected to it. With gentleness and respect. So be kind and value them. Gentleness and respect. So in this mix, first see to yourself. Settle Christ as Lord for you. Always remember, you can only change you. You can't change them. You can change you. You can change yourself. You can't change your husband. You can change how you parent. You can't change your child. You can only change you. They can only change them. What you need to see to, if you're not getting the outcome you want, and that outcome is what's important, is how can I adjust how I behave to get this outcome given who they are? And sometimes that answer is that you can't. Sometimes the answer is you need to shift your strategy. Sometimes the answer is you're making it worse by the strategy that you're using. And you also have to consider to what degree motive is important. Because depending upon what you're trying to accomplish, the reason why they do it might be important. Now, if you're an employer and you just need the behaviors from your employees, you can use a fear-based system. If you get it done or you're fired. And you can do that. Because you may not care why someone gets their job done. You just want the job done. If you tell someone, you be here at 9 o'clock every day or you're fired, they'll show up at 9 o'clock because they're afraid of being fired. As a parenting strategy, as a relationship strategy, that might not be the best way to do. Because it's kind of hard to fire your kid. And if you're motivating your child to do, say, the responsible thing purely because they're scared not to, then that might not be the character you want to instill them as a fear-based character. Now, there's some things you might think, well, it's the behavior that's important. Like, a large class assignment where passing or failing or graduating might be on the line. I mean, you might push and you might, shove and pull and prod, and it might be like pulling teeth, but you're going to make them get that done, period, no matter what penalty you have to impose, because they're going to graduate or not graduate based upon this one last big project, and you push. But as a general policy to always be pushing, prodding, and fighting over every single thing to, sometimes what we say is this a hill to die on, to treat every single issue as a hill to die on, might not be a good relational strategy to continue to have a relationship with your children and be able to continue to be an influence in their lives. Same thing, of course, with husbands and wives. The difference being with husbands and wives is they can get divorced. They don't have to put up with this. Your child can't, divorce mom and dad when, they're 12. But adults can separate. Whether they get legally divorced or not, they can at least leave. And so, there's a certain relational strategy you want to maintain if you want to maintain your marriage. But in all of that, it's you see to you. What am I doing? What can I do different? How can I handle this better? Is this outcome so critical that I'm willing to sacrifice the relationship in order to get this outcome? Now, sometimes that answer will be yes, and sometimes that answer will be no. I think very often you'll find that answer is no. In one particular case, a mother was having these rip-roaring fights with a 12-year-old daughter over shaving her legs. The daughter wanted to shave her legs. She had dark hair, she had hairy legs, she wanted to shave her legs. And Dr. Dobson, who is well known in Christian circles as a parenting expert, happened to be in proximity. And this mother, Dr. Dobson, can you help me? I said, well, what's the issue? Said, well, it's my daughter, and she wants to shave her legs, and I don't want to, and we're fighting about this all the time. What should I do? And Dr. Dobson says, give her a razor and teach her how to shave her legs. He says, but she's 12. It's like, I know. Give her a razor and teach her how to shave her legs. And his basic point is this. There's going to be big issues you have to grapple with. As a mother, why is her shaving her legs that big of an issue? And, of course, it's because from a mother, she associates shaving your legs with being sexy. Shaving your legs with, being sexual. But do you really think that's why your daughter's doing it? That she has some other 12-year-old boy she wants to have sex with, and that's why she wants to shave her legs? Well, of course not. Or do you think maybe she wants to shave her legs because her legs are hairy and all of her friends' legs are shaved? And she feels like, well, they look pretty and she looks ugly. And she's trying to fit in. Well, yeah. Then why are you telling her she's not allowed to fit in and she's not allowed to be pretty? Well, but... So you have to pick the issues that are big enough to fight over. This mother was melting down her relationship with her daughter because her daughter wanted to look pretty like all of her friends. Because she was the only girl in her circles who wasn't shaving her legs, who had really hairy legs. And when you have dark, hairy legs and you're a 12-year-old girl and what that does to you socially, that was impacting the girl's life. And she didn't understand why mom wouldn't let her shave her legs. It's because to mom, why does a woman shave her legs? And somehow mom connected to, well, you shave your legs so that you can be sexual with a guy. Not thinking that, your daughter might be wanting to shave her legs so she can fit in with the girls. It's nothing to do with guys yet. And Dr. Dobson, who is very conservative when it comes to, social issues and parenting issues, just said, give her a razor, teach her to shave her legs. Basically figure out, is this really an issue worth destroying your relationship over? Some issues are. Some issues aren't. If your daughter's experimenting with drugs, put everything on the table. That's something that it's more important to get that outcome of get her off drugs than it is if it matters whether she likes you or not. But leg shaving, come on. You're going to need this relationship capital for big issues on other things. So first, see to yourself. If this mother had seen to herself first, she might have realized what she was trying to do to her daughter. You can only change you. Now, this is a path of power. That your first, most important power is the power to control yourself. Not your power to control other people, not your power to inflict your will on other people, but the power to control yourself. And leadership is to be a good example. That's the first level of leadership, is be the example. This is removing the log from your own eye. And Matthew 7, 3-5, talking about, You go to your brother to remove a speck from their eye, but behold, you have a log in your own eye, you hypocrite. Remove the log from your own eye first, then you will be able to see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And so we see to ourselves first. If this isn't working, we see to ourselves first. And then second, we see to those for whom we are responsible. And say that again. We don't see generically to all others. We see to those for whom we are responsible. Positions of responsibility and leadership may require that we oversee and guide others. Now, parenting is probably the most profound example of this. So before you go trying to tell the world how to behave, see to yourself first, and then see to those for whom you have influence, that you have responsibility. They are yours to guide, influence, train, control. See to them first. Now, by this we include seeing to your own family, see to your own church. So before we as a church will try to go out there and tell everyone else how to live their lives, how are we doing? Am I as an individual doing well? How's my family doing? How's my church doing? How are my students doing? Where I actually have the responsibility to be an influence, where I have a responsibility to be a light, where I have a responsibility to be a leader, a teacher, a guide, where I have a responsibility to be a member of the team. How am I doing? How are we doing? How am I doing in influencing those closest to me? Largely by way of example. Now, there's a Western saying and an Eastern saying. The Western saying is those who can't do, teach. You go learn how it does, and you go teach other people how to do it. The coaching model is the coach doesn't necessarily have the abilities of members of the team, nor necessarily has he ever had the abilities of a team. The Eastern model is a sensei model. And the teaching model there is the teacher has gone first. The martial arts version of sensei, when you really unpack it, is one who has walked a path and can show others the way. I can show you how to get a black belt because I've walked that path. I can show you how to be a martial arts master because I've walked that path. And this idea of those who have done teach is a little bit different. And so when sometimes people blow into people's lives, they want to tell everyone else what to do without having to be the example. They want to be the commander, but not the leader. They want to be the teller, but not the influencer. They want to be able to just bark their orders, tell the world how the world's supposed to be, tell you how you're supposed to be. And it doesn't matter to them if they have ever been anywhere near that, or if the people that are closest to them have any idea what they're doing either. But boy, do they want to boss you around. And one of the things I'll say sometimes to leaders in training is, if you're my leader, why should I do what you say I should do, whether I agree with you or not, if you can't get you to do what you know you should do, which presumably you agree with? So you want me to be obedient to you when even you aren't obedient to you. And you want me to be obedient to you even when I disagree with you, when you aren't obedient to you, even though you agree with yourself. And so this is a leadership principle. So you see to your family, your church, your friends, your businesses, the places that you are connected, where you have influence and you have responsibility. And then third, then you see to others in a loving way, with gentleness, with respect. You come from this place of love. You come from this place of, I want the best for you. So often people want to see others and they want to judge. They want to condemn. They want to command. And otherwise you want to tell them what to do, what to think, what to believe, and what their lives ought to look like. But remember, be a light, not a judge. Provide illumination, not condemnation. Make things better. Basic silver rule. Make things better. Do no harm. Encourage them. Love them. Understand them. Connect with them. And then persuade. influence, help them see by their own realization, by their own thinking. Real enlightenment, if you are truly enlightened, it comes with empathy. A false enlightenment comes with judgment. One young lady I knew learned a lot of fantastic lessons very, very young. Now, if you do not read books, if you do not listen to audios, if you do not attend live event trainings, if you do none of these things, you're going to miss out on a lot of wisdom, a lot of illumination. And it's amazing how much people still want the right to judge and condemn and command and tell everyone else how it should be without these things, without the training, without the education. But for those people who pursue these things, sometimes there's the flip side of it. People who have their bachelor's degrees, their master's degrees, their PhDs, the people who read a book a month, the people who listen to audios on an ongoing basis. It's very easy to get very superior to people because, I know all these things and you don't. And in one particular young lady, she was reading books, she was listening to audios, and she was paying her own money, saving her own money to attend seminars from the time she was a young teenager. I think, if I recall, the first seminar she paid her own money for, that she saved up for, she attended when she was 14 years old. Now, I'll tell you, I wasn't saving my allowance money to attend seminars when I was 14 years old, but she was. And she was finding out, what do I need to do so that maybe I can work for some of these seminars? And she was doing these things, and she was reading the books, and she was listening to the audios. Well, one of the things I would encounter with her from time to time is, say, when she was about 20, 22 years old, is I would hear her say, well, why don't they understand this? They're 45. I'm only 20, and I understand this. And I had to catch her when I heard her saying that. I said, okay, whoa, hang on a second. You've been attending live training since you were 14. You've got 6 years of attending multiple seminars a year. You've got 6 years of reading books, about a book a month on average. You've got 6 years of listening to audio programs, about an audio program a month at that point. And with all of this listening, all of this reading, all of this training, you have an unusual, unique level of insight. This person has just been living life like normal people live life. If you gave them 6 years of the same training you have, they would see it too. It's not a matter of age. It's a matter of training. So in that sense, it would be a lot like someone saying, well, I'm only 20. I don't understand why that 40-year-old can't do the things I can do. It's because you're a black belt. You've been training in this. You earned your black belt. They've never taken the lesson in their lives. Under those circumstances, it becomes obvious. Like, oh, okay, well, that would make sense. Like, how come they don't get it? I get this because you're a lawyer. You went to law school. They never went to law school. They've just been living life. So we get it in some arenas. We forget it in others. That people know the type of things that they know often because they've been trained, because they've been exposed to it. And it's not obvious to other people. It can even be an alien way of thinking to other people. And so when you have real enlightenment, it comes with empathy. When I graduated from law school, and I am a lawyer, and I'm also a real estate broker, and I have all these other credentials, I've read literally hundreds of books, maybe 1,000 books, I don't even really know. I've listened to thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours of audio. If I truly have any sort of illumination from all of this exposure, I should have tremendous empathy for people, especially empathy for people who don't know these things. And why wouldn't they know these things? Because they haven't read the books. They haven't listened to the audios. They didn't get the degrees I had. Just like my doctor friends should be able to look at me and have tremendous empathy for what I don't know about medicine, because I'm not a doctor. I didn't go to medical school. I didn't have a residency. I don't practice. I don't get the updates. I'm not exposed to that part of life. And when I walk into that arena, it can be scary because I don't know what's going on. And as self-evident as it might be for them, if they have good empathy, they understand that, well, for me as a doctor, all these diseases and conditions and problems are, a day-to-day job. But for the person sitting here, this is a uniquely mind-blowing, mind-boggling, heart-wrenching, painful situation. And if they are an illuminated doctor, then they're going to be able to look at their patient and understand how scary it is for them. Because, well, I might deal with, cancer patients multiple times a week. To them, this is life and death, and they've never encountered this before. This is unique to them. Or as a lawyer, when I'm dealing with someone's legal case, that this might be the biggest, most dramatic thing they've ever had go on in their lives. And they don't understand why this is happening to them. Well, for me, it's just normal day-to-day stuff, and so on and so on. And if you have enlightenment, you will have empathy. False enlightenment comes with judgment. Well, I don't know what's wrong with this person. I know this. Why don't they know this? Because you're a doctor. It's like, well, these people just need to understand and just let me do my... Because you're the lawyer. You know what's going on. They don't. And that difference between empathy or judgment, between that empathy and that condemnation, between true empathy and that feeling of, well, I'm superior to them because... It's like, well, no, you have superior medical knowledge, superior legal knowledge, superior martial arts skill, but that doesn't make you a superior human being. You should have empathy for people who don't have your training, who don't have your insight into whatever the issue of the moment is, and be empathetic with them, to be understanding of where they are, to try to see it from their point of view, so that you can connect with them, so that you can help them to see and help them to understand. That's what true enlightenment does. A false enlightenment is, well, I've learned this thing, and now I have this new tool to bludgeon people over the head. And there are some people that do that. They use their knowledge, they use their insight, that they'll find an interesting scripture, and they go, another club. I can bash people over the head with this thing. And you don't do that. So you want to live an enlightened life, an elevated life, a more loving life. Be a light. If you are enlightened, it illuminates your own heart for you. If you are enlightened, you provide light, not judgment. You draw people into the light. You go to people with the light, not so that you can tell them what's there, but so that they can see it for themselves. Psalm 119, 105. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. The word of God is a lamp and a light, so that they can see where they stand better, so they can see where to go better. And a lot of people, honestly, including us, this is one thing, is when we're talking about people, like, well, those people. No, we're talking about people, us, people. Sometimes we don't really know where we stand. And sometimes we need the lamp for our feet. They go, like, oh, I didn't know this is where I was taking my stand. I didn't realize that when I'm having screaming matches with my daughter over shaving her legs, where I'm taking my actual stand. I never got close enough to my daughter to see what she sees. I was over here fighting with my daughter, only seeing what I see. And when I find out that what she sees is my friends are teasing me mercilessly because I'm Sasquatch, because I'm ugly, because I've got these hairy bear legs. And what I want to do is have shaved bear legs. Different bear, B-E-A-R and B-A-R-E, in case you didn't catch that. I want to fit in. I want to be pretty. And in a case like that, the mother goes to the daughter, and both of them have a lamp unto their feet, and they really look at, where am I taking my stand? Is this really where I want to be taking my stand? And have a light unto the path. Where do we go from here? Where do I go from here? What are my options? What are the paths? But what is my path? What path am I supposed to walk? And so as we wrap up decisions, and how you persuade and how you guide. We're talking, of course, about people accepting Christ as Savior. But we're also talking much more broadly for every choice, every decision we make, and how those decisions work, how everyone's decision-making process works. On every issue, anyone makes a decision on, and how that works. So that we can see to ourselves, we can take the logs out of our own eyes, so that we can see clearly. Because when we combine Matthew 7 with Psalm 119, if God's truth shows up in my life and is a light to my feet, but I've got a beam in my eye, I still may not see very clearly where I'm taking my stand. I need to deal with my own stuff first. And God could illuminate for me, but if I refuse to take these beams out of my eyes, I can't see a blessed thing or a cursed thing. And I have no idea if I'm in the midst of one or the other. But to remove the beam from my own eye, to deal with my own stuff first, to see to myself first, and then I can see that illumination all around me already. And I can see the light of my path. And I can help provide illumination and be a light and not a judge for others. To help others make better decisions, to help others deal with their own logs. And to be able, as Matthew 7 says, after you've dealt with your own stuff, now you can see clearly to help your brother with the speck in his eye. But if you don't deal with your own stuff first, your own stuff is going to be the filter by which you end up misperceiving everyone else's stuff. So decisions. I hope that this series has been illuminating, insightful, and of course used well. You will use it for self-evaluation. You'll see to yourself first. You'll see to your relationships with your spouses, with boyfriends, girlfriends, with your children, with your friends, with your co-workers, with your employees, with, where you have influence first. And you're not going to concern yourself all that much with the world unless you're going to actually step out and do something with it. And if you want to see some of how so many people have learned to do this, no judgment on them. They just learned it from the way they see everyone else do it. You'll see how judgmental people are of groups they have no influence with. And judgmental in such a way that they will never have influence with those groups. That what they're really doing is they're just preaching to the choir in a way that's turning everyone else off. And in political season, you see it in spades. And it's because they don't know. They just don't know. Now that we know, we should do better. When you know better, you do better. And now we know better. So now we'll do better. Thank you.